By the end of 1916, neither side had achieved what they desired and both withdrew from the battles with heavy casualties. In 1917, two major developments occurred that would upset the balance of power: the entry of the United States into the war and the withdrawal of the collapsing Russia following the revolution. The new commander of the French army, Nivelle, adopted the classic Western Front strategy that relied on artillery bombardments followed by infantry assaults. However, he planned a much broader offensive rather than limited operations in specific sectors. The British, on the other hand, were preparing plans based on tanks and artillery. Artillery had been highly effective since the beginning of the war, especially when well coordinated with aircraft, and was generally considered reliable. Tanks, however, were not trusted much. They had been tested at the Somme and had proved to be slow and cumbersome. The British strategy relied on attacking a specific sector, capturing it, and then advancing further from that point. The Germans also changed the defensive strategy. They constructed the Hindenburg Line and withdrew significantly along the front. Instead of concentrating their entire army on a single front line, they created more flexible and layered defensive systems. In this way, they reduced the effectiveness of artillery bombardments and strengthened their defenses with barbed wire, machine guns, and artillery. French commander Nivelle planned a large-scale offensive that would deliver rapid results. The German withdrawal to the Hindenburg Line, however, disrupted the operation. In April, the French and British began their offensives. The British attacked at Arras while the French struck at Saint-Quentin. They advanced successfully and broke through the lines by several kilometers, but could not completely overcome the new German defense system and were halted. The French launched their main attack in Champagne. As the Germans knew that an assault was coming, they had prepared strong defenses and also held air superiority. The French attacked the German lines and managed to break through, but suffered heavy losses against the German counter-defenses. Mutinies and indiscipline soon began to spread within the French army. After the offensive, Nivelle was dismissed in May and replaced by Philippe Pétain. The British attacked the German defenses at Messines. They had secretly dug tunnels beneath the German positions and approached them closely. The British possessed overwhelming superiority in artillery and used it to full effect. They detonated the mines they had placed in the tunnels, causing an explosion with the force of an earthquake that devastated the German forces. The Allied forces then launched the Third Battle of Ypres near Ypres. Beginning their offensive at the end of July, the Allies failed to achieve significant success and were forced to halt and postpone their attacks due to poor weather conditions. In mid-August, they renewed the assault, but were once again stopped by the flexible German defensive system. In November, at the Battle of Cambrai, the British launched an attack. Tanks were to be used on a large scale in this battle. The British managed to break through the German defensive lines with their tanks and cross the Hindenburg Line, but due to losses and mechanical failures, the number of operational tanks had decreased significantly. They were eventually halted by a successful German counterattack. Thus, 1917 came to an end. The Germans had largely secured the Eastern Front, and with each passing day more units were being transferred to the west. The Germans aimed to launch a major offensive on the Western Front before more Americans could arrive, hoping to crush France. At the end of March, the Germans launched the offensive known as the Kaiserschlacht, the Ludendorff Offensive, or the Spring Offensive. They began by attacking the British lines. They unleashed the largest artillery bombardment of the war and, with Operation Michael, devastated the British forces, advancing further and faster than ever before and pushing the British back significantly. It was the greatest success achieved on the front since the beginning of the war. The Kaiser even declared the 24th of March a national holiday. The British Expeditionary Force was placed under the command of the French General Foch, as the British feared that the French might prioritize the defense of Paris rather than assisting them fully. The British regrouped and managed to halt the Germans before Amiens, causing the Germans to call off their attack there in early April. A few days later, the Germans attacked the British lines again. They captured most of the key strategic positions, but intense British resistance, combined with the arrival of French reinforcements, brought him to a halt. After the battles here, the Germans launched another attack against the French lines in the Champagne region. Following a heavy artillery bombardment, they broke through the poorly positioned Allied line, advanced dozens of kilometers, and reached the approaches to the Marne. Paris was now under serious threat, and the Germans had been shelling the city with long-range artillery since the start of the offensive. The government even prepared evacuation plans to Bordeaux. The French rushed large numbers of fresh troops to the line near the Marne, and significant numbers of Americans were also arriving. At the Marne, the Germans were stopped by the French defense, bringing the Kaiserschlacht offensive to an end. The French counter-attacked and pushed the Germans back, while the British launched a counter-offensive at Amiens, driving the Germans back several kilometers before being halted by a German counter-blow. By mid-July, the Germans had completely collapsed, and the initiative had passed entirely to the Allies. At the end of August, the Allies launched their attacks, advancing while inflicting devastating casualties on the Germans, who withdrew to the Hindenburg Line. The Allies planned a major offensive and attacked in late September. Superior in every respect, the Allies broke through the Hindenburg Line and overcame the German defense. It was now clear that Germany would lose, and the Allies continued their advance. Although they suffered heavy casualties in some sectors, the Germans had accepted defeat. The Kaiser abdicated, severe internal unrest broke out across Germany, and all of Germany's allies had already been defeated. German Chancellor Prince Max von Baden contacted American President Wilson and accepted peace on the basis of the 14 points announced by Wilson. The Chancellor resigned in favor of the Social Democrats. The armistice signed in a railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne came into effect at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, and Germany surrendered, bringing the Western Front to a close. This was the second part of the Western Front. See you next time.